Okay, happy Wednesday. We've got a video for a set called the Terra. This is from a company called LimeEars. Let me go ahead and drop this right here. LimeEars Terra. This is a 6-driver with one 7mm titanium diaphragm for infra sub frequencies, 2 BAs for low mid frequencies, 2 BAs for mid high frequencies, one 2023 Knowles RAU new generation BA for ultra high frequency. Main features TITE module, Hero super tweeter, Varibore SaaS core, polymer impregnated synthetic opal, piezo, multi-tone crystalline bellow opal faceplate. Okay, a lot of words there. Don't know what I'm going to do, but as always, comment below this video, give the video a thumbs up if you generally like it. Never know what I'm going to do with this. Most likely it would be for Patreons, but I sometimes get crazy during the holidays, so better to try than to not try. Let's go ahead and take a look at the frequency response graph, courtesy of Tech Power Up, VSG, who I just recommended. Sub bass over mid bass with some actual mids. It's got a very gradual ear gain. It's got some overemphasis compared to my my graph, which is the dotted line in the background. It's just a kind of a reference, and it's got energy that's pretty much going all the way off, descending and falling off like I would prefer. This graph is a little different than what my ears hear in good and bad ways, and let me explain that. Before we continue, let's talk about music as we always do. These are the tracks that I use to evaluate the low frequency. I'm always listening to the other things, but I'm focusing on the bass. And then the mids, let me get this out a little bit so you can see it. Van Halen, U2, Rolling Stones, Eagles, Grateful Dead, Steely Dan, Soundgarden, Robert Palmer, Neil Young, Led Zeppelin, Meatloaf, Jim Croce. In the treble, Aerosmith, Big Boy, Bruce Springsteen, Boston, Elton John, Led Zeppelin, Little Feat, Rat. Don't know if you know what Rat is. OCD stuff, the Michael Jackson beep, the finger snaps on Blister in the Sun, the Freebird crowd, the kind of get a sense of depth, triangulation. It's a kind of ghetto, but it seems to work. The gate announcement, transition, On the Run by Pink Floyd, the finger slides on D on the fretboard, the cough on Wish You Were Here by Gilmore. Low res output will make a lot of those Easter eggs almost impossible to catch. So those are things that I listen to, as well as what I'm going to talk about. Now, let's go ahead and talk about, I might show you a close-up look of this separately in a video so that you can see it. It's got a genuine kind of lime metal shell anodized coat, like an aluminum with the cap. The fit is easy. I didn't have any issues with it. I used my regular CP tips. Let's go ahead and talk about music, get into the low frequency. We're listening to Kendrick Lamar right now. The first thing that I listened to was this running off of the Canon C92 off of a DAP, and I had just gotten the Kendrick Lamar tracks. They're MP3s, the only MP3s in my entire library. But it slammed really hard, and I thought, does this have 2 dynamic drivers in it? So my initial reaction to the set was that it's really, really good at bass, and it was with the GNX tracks, like Whacked Out Murals, GNX, Peekaboo off of Kendrick Lamar's latest album. So the low end sounded excellent. The 808 Roland type drops like that sounded great, and all of my hip hop library that I listened sounded very good. As we get into 4 and 5 string bass guitars, the pulls, the plucks, the releases, the snap, the ringing of the strings, which has to do with the overall tuning of the set across the board. It's not just in the bass. That's just the fundamental region. I thought that the bass guitar sounded good. This reminded me a lot of, and I don't want to, but the people that watch my channel might remember this, the melee. Think about the melee tuning and really, really high resolving. So you get a good slam, you get the energy from the cymbals. It's not a stage beast, but for my library, it did everything. This is like the melee on steroids. It's like a perfected one. It sounds excellent, and it has tuning that's not radically different from that. It maybe has extra energy in the upper mids, but I'm not actually picking that up, and that's why I was saying that the graph doesn't really reflect my listening impressions. But the bass guitar sounded fantastic. As we get into Bonham's kick drum, the iconic drop from the 4th album when he comes in with the kick drum or bass drum, it sounds like a hip-hop drop. Boom, 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 boom. This has plenty of energy for that. This has a 7mm dynamic driver, and some of the smaller drivers sometimes seem to be very lacking. This didn't give me, and at no time did it ever give me, the feeling that I was dealing with a small, almost micro driver. Never at any point listening to the low frequency. I thought the lows sounded good. The kick drum, the bass guitar, the 808 type Roland drops, or the hip hop portion of my library, I think they all sounded good. I didn't have any issue there. As we move into the mids, we're getting into mostly vocals, essentially all vocals. And Chris Cornell, Lane Staley, a girl named Nina doing the cover of Blondie, Heart of Glass. I thought it did nice. If you're worried about female vocals with the elevated bass, this is where the titanium type diaphragm. Titanium is, God, what was the name of the Ultrasone Pro? Remember those a long time ago? You got to be old school to remember it. Those had a vicious hard bass, but it was like a mid bass, and it was really, the decay was extremely fast, which made the mid seem cleaner. But if you're really a bass head, you noticed that it sounded like it was just microseconds a little bit quick. The good effect of that on an IEM, and in this set's example, is that this doesn't really seem to get in the way of female vocals really at all. It seems to do them quite good because it does have elevated bass, but it's not overly elevated in the bass head, and because it's got the titanium coating on the PT Mylar, it doesn't seem to interfere with female vocals. So female vocals being more sensitive than male vocals, in my opinion, having much less flexibility in the mid bass, I thought both of them did well. So vocals sounded fine. As we move into harmonics and overtones, which is really everything from the upper mids and beyond, it's emphasized, and this is where, if I was going to be graph sniffing, I would start to say this is where we're having issues. I never picked up an issue. I never thought that cymbals were overly energized. So rides and crashes, I didn't have a problem with them. Guitars, electric and acoustic, with or without distortion pedals, I didn't have a problem with those either. Nothing. There was no point where I thought, oh, that's too spicy for me. I didn't have that. I thought it sounded good. I thought it sounded really good. Now, I've talked about the bass, and I've talked about the mids, and I've talked about the harmonics and overtones, and I really don't have anything to tell you that is negative. Like, I don't think that's good. I could easily look at that graph and see this gap between my ideal curve and that bump and say, this stuff is spicy. That would be the lazy, very common post-COVID, we got a million opinion givers in this hobby. That's what they would cite. I don't hear that at all. I just mentioned the songs to you, and I'll show you some examples right here. You can go ahead and freeze this. Maybe I'll put it up there. I'm not being vague with you. Here's where I have to talk about a couple things. One is, it says titanium diaphragm. I got it. It says 2 BAs for low mids, and then 2 BAs for, we're talking about the entire mid frequencies basically. And I don't know what BAs those are, because it says the nulls are the latest nulls, but it's not identifying what the mid BAs are. And this is something I'm going to bang on with. I'm going to go back to some flagship sets. It's going to make some people sad. And I'm going to talk about this phenomenon. And this, I'm going to pin to the top of the comment section if the owner of LimeEars reaches out and says, oh, those are nulls, and they were customized, and here's gives me some kind of a clarity, and then I'll go ahead and pin it. So take this with a grain of salt as far as what are these BAs. I would like that they say for $1,000 that we use is exactly this. And I'm not sure why companies don't do that. Maybe it's because those same drivers can be found and more affordable. That doesn't mean that they're going to sound as good because they're as implemented as well as somebody like a professional LimeEars does it. So there's reasons that they might not be saying what those BAs are, but I'd like to point out that I think that it should be stated to the consumer, as it is with graphics cards or CPUs or op amps inside of my gear, or really everything that I buy, I know what's inside it because it's listed. I think for transducers and IEMs, it should be the same thing. So the balanced armatures is one thing. The second thing that I would say is, for $1,000, it's competitive, but it's not really doing anything that another set can't do. it's really like a very well-tuned, upgraded, stuffed with better than a single dynamic driver melee. It presents things in the same way. It's a good long listen set. So it's not bad. It's $1,000. Is it worth it? Let me go ahead and rank it. Is it a dumpster fire? No, I enjoyed the heck out of listening to this set. Hope was free. It might be for somebody, or it might be a Patreon thing. Somebody sent me a mail today about Patreon. You guys want to get better options, you need to wait. I'm trying to wait for you so that you can have more things at the garage sale. So hold up a second. The last one we did was October, which was a month late, which I'm totally transparent with you guys with. So we know where we're at and we're behind. And when we have enough stuff that everybody has a fair and good option, then we'll go ahead and do it. So that's how that goes, to let the Patreons know. And if you're not cool with that, you can always just walk away. That's always an option too. And thank you for your support if you decide to do that. And good luck to you in the future. So, hope it was free, maybe for somebody. Coping is working. No. Competes with its peers. Yes. $1,000. Other things that are priced at $1,000 with my library and the replay. Again, I really don't have any issues with the sound replay of this set. My issues come when I'm looking for info before I do my review, and I'm looking at 2BAs without any specifics, and then another 2BAs, and then there is one that is named as the Knowles, and I can go check the white paper of that, and I can see how that is, when it was made, exactly where it is appropriately placed on the scale. Like, where does Knowles think that serves its best purpose? And obviously it's a super tweeter. And I can check that. What's in between, I don't know. And that's becoming a thing recently. That's not LimeEars thing. And again, it's very possible that those are just legit Sony or Knowles that were customized, but they just didn't mention it. So I'll update that on a pinned comment. So if you see this video, check out the comment section because there might be a pinned video right there. It looks very nice. The build quality is good. I had no issues in use. I didn't have any issues with the sound quality. I didn't feel like I was lacking anything. I was surprised by the impact for a single 7mm. My only issues came at the very end when I was trying to get info. I could have reached out to the person that sent it to me, but you can't do that. So this is what you would do. You would take a look at their website and say, what's inside there? I'm thinking of buying this for $1,000. 7mm titanium, 2BAs, non-specific, another 2 non-specific, and then the final one is quite specific. So I would recommend I want to say thank you to this person for sending it out, number one. Number two, I hope you can take the criticism, the feedback maturely. A lot of companies can't, and some do, and they profit down the road because they get the reputation for being open-minded, number one, and then number two, they sometimes adjust because they think, yeah, that's the plus and minus. It would be better to just, yeah, maybe go that way. Nobody's an expert in this field, whether it's making gear, talking about how gear sounds, or being a seller. Nobody's a professional super expert. You always have room to grow and take advice from kids or anybody. The information comes from the wildest places. I happen to know what I'm talking about to some extent, and I would think that if you're asking this much money for a set of earphones, it would be better to disclose what's inside, even if it's common in other sets, just for that to be not a consideration. Looks better for the company, it's easier for the consumer to consider and look overall, and I think that by the end of this year, coming up, 2025, all companies are going to do that because I'm going to repeatedly be pushing this topic. Starting with my last video. If we're going to talk about a new balanced armature company making its way in, then name the company, name the custom versions, and then let people start to give their impressions over time and start to say, yeah, that one's not so good, but I do like this one. Or it's difficult to give opinions on non-specific BAs. Don't know what this is and can't compare it to another one because don't know what that is. Apples to apples or apples to oranges? I don't know why this vagueness exists in the hobby. This is not a LimeEars problem. But it's right there. And before I do my video, it's staring me in the face, and I just complained about this in a previous video. How does it sound? I think it sounds great. Is it worth $1,000? Most sets aren't worth anywhere near that. I didn't find this to be lacking, or like that doesn't sound like it's belongs in this price bracket. So sure. And it sounds like an extremely mature melee. And I mean that in a good way. Like, a lot of people love that set. They didn't love the condensation issue, but that probably wouldn't be a problem here. That's it. Thank you for the set. And hopefully in the future, you'd consider me, because I will give you straight up feedback. And if you pay attention and watch a second time, you realize that the sound replay was not an issue whatsoever. It was just the transparency with the end user about what's inside, and maybe consider, because it might not even been something that you paid attention to, that overall, long term, it would be better to just say, we're using these drivers. And then if people dislike something and they say it's in the mids, for example, you might be able to identify that it's those drivers that you're using, or not. Like, that's the benefit, besides full transparency, is that people can identify parts of things they have issues with, and you can pull that wild card out and then replace it with something else and then fix the problem. Can't fix things if you don't know what the problem is, and people can't help you fix things if they don't know what even is part of the problem. And I'm talking about driver identification. So that's it. I'm out. LimeEars Terra, very good set. If you're up in the kilobuck range, it's something that you should consider. Get your ears on it. It plays back my library very well. And I am out.